So something you should probably know about our mission is that there's a lot of immigration. I flew over 60 times on my mission, and like I have 66 stamps on my passport, and I've only gone to my mission, like nowhere else. We left at like 3 o'clock in the morning from the MTC, and it says if you're flying to Trinidad, you need two things. You either need your work permit, which should be stamped or stapled into your passport, or you should have a flight itinerary showing that you are leaving Trinidad to your next assignment. So you're able to get in the country. And I had neither. And so, and the other missionaries, they all had their way to get out except for me. So I was kind of worried about that. Trinidad, you do need a work permit to serve as a missionary there. And so when I got there, we were flying there, and I'd never left the country before. Like, I was like, what's customs? Like, what is this? And we're just standing in line, and we're like freaking out because we're like, wow, look, like commercials from other countries. And I get up there, and she like asked for my paperwork, and I just tell her, well, I'm just going to be here for a while. She asked, how long are you going to be staying? Well, possibly. And I said, well, possibly 2 years. By the way, don't say that. Please do not say that. And she's like, where's your work permit? And so I show her the little thing that Thomas S. Monson had signed saying that I could be a missionary. She's like, that's not it. So she asked for a flight itinerary out, and I'm like, well, I don't have one. She's like, what if you never return home? And that kind of like freaked me out because I'm like, the MTC has sent me all the way here without the proper documentation to get into the country. Like, are you serious? And I say, well, I know that God has a plan for me and that everything will work out. And she just kind of like looked at me and looked a little strange. People from Trinidad have an interesting accent, and so according to my mission president, it was actually a miracle that night that I could understand her the first time, and it actually was, because most other Trinidadians, I didn't understand them for the first couple weeks. It's a very interesting, the closest thing would probably be to is like kind of like a different version of a British accent, but very, very thick. And so as I just handed her everything, like, this is all I have, and I had like my mission president's phone number. So she called, and mission president's wife picked up Sister Egbert. She's like, well, we're expecting 6 missionaries tonight, and they should all come through immigration just fine. And the immigration worker said, well, how long will he be here? And so, inspired from the Lord, my mission president's wife, Sister Egbert, she said, well, we're planning on getting them trained for 2 days of orientation, and they're getting shipped off to their companions. So because she said shipped off, the woman automatically assumed that I'd be leaving pretty soon. I actually stayed in Trinidad, my first transfer. And so she gave me 90 days, and she let me go through. Of course, then we all walk out, and other missionaries, they all had their flight itineraries except for one, and so they all didn't have any problems. They got through, and we met our mission president, and it was of course, my mission president's first time picking up, and he's like, hi, I'm your mission president, I'm President Egbert. It was so humid. I thought it was raining, and I walk out, and no, it wasn't raining. It was just so humid that all the windows were fogged up. And we hop in the van. It's very late. It's like 11 o'clock at night. And so 3 a.m. to 11 o'clock at night. So get ready when you're going to go to the mission. It's going to be a while.
Like a lot of missionaries who have to travel a ways to get to their mission, we were up at like 3 in the morning, just, bus to Salt Lake City Airport. And then we just flew all day. And then the flight from Miami into Trinidad was kind of interesting. So we got there probably around 11 p.m. at night. By the time we had gotten off the plane, just because they don't run, it just wasn't taking, it wasn't going as quickly as we would have wanted it to. And so we got through to immigration. We were waiting there for a little while. I was one of the first people up to the immigration officers, and then after a little while, she had looked over my papers. I was following the instructions that were given to me by the MTC, but there just seemed to be a problem. And for whatever reason, 5 missionaries were able to go through. 3 of us, they held and told us to go wait back on the bench. And so we're just kind of freaking out a little bit and not really wondering what's happening. And then they came back and told us that we were going to be deported because we didn't have the right documentation or whatever. We couldn't understand it because we had the same things as everybody else. We had no idea. So anyway, by this point, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. The next plane that they can put us out on is at 6, and they wanted us there at 5. And so they were going to put us up in a hotel and they had a security officer that was just in charge of us, and he was a nice guy, and he suggested to us, he's like, hey, like the hotel that they're going to put you up in, it's kind of far away. He's like, I can take you there, but my friend, he has another place around here. It's not nice, but it's just, I mean, it's a shower and a bed. And by this point, we were just all freaked out. And so it was me and Elder Tolman and then Sister Campbell. So the three of us are just together, like, okay, like whatever. So he drives us around the corner to a very questionable inn. I can't even remember the name of it, but it wasn't a nice neighborhood. And we were kind of freaked out over that. But anyways, they took us to the airport the next morning. We got on a plane, so I had to go all the way back to Miami, and then trying to get payphones to work because they're so outdated there, and then be able to contact President Gamiat, our mission president, and he finally got us on a plane back. And so because of that, instead of going directly into Trinidad, they actually sent us to St. Martin first, because St. Martin is a little easier to get into. It's a very popular tourist island, so anybody with a US passport, they're pretty lenient. And so we got in, and then turns out that was just where I was going to stay. I met my trainer. There was just kind of an emergency moving around of things, and that was where I just stayed, and the other two missionaries moved on to other places. And so my first area just got to be in St. Martin, and I hadn't met my mission president. I didn't meet him until I think it was probably about a month after that at his own conference, where we had to fly to another island in Guadeloupe. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.